Ole Miss is fighting to flip several key targets on signing day. Will they?
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, I'm Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. To today's show, we're diving into early signing day and the incredible work that Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss has done this season. There's a lot of excitement surrounding potential flips, including Deuce Knight, who's currently committed to Auburn, Tyler Lockhart, currently committed to Mississippi State, and Connor Hawes, who's currently committed to Arkansas. Drama always surrounds recruiting, and Ole Miss is making waves. Everybody loves a good flip, and this year is no different. Stay tuned as we break down every bit of it here on Locked On Ole Miss. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Don't forget to find a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On Ole Miss or Corey Burton, even at Locked On Vandy, offer great perspectives on college football, the SEC, and yes, even Ole Miss. So check them out. You can start the season off with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So it's really great stuff. Happy early signing day, everybody. December 4th. It's earlier than it's ever been. It's not quite at championship week or in June like they're talking about, but it is earlier than it has ever been. There is a late signing window as well, and we'll see exactly how that goes and what Ole Miss does with a transfer portal that's sitting right in the middle. Everybody thinks of Ole Miss as a transfer portal school, and it honestly has earned that reputation with top 5 finishes. But this year's recruiting class is looking to be pretty special, and it has a chance to be even more special when you look at the potential flips for the Ole Miss Rebels. We're going to start out with Tyler Lockhart from Winona, Mississippi. He's the number 1 linebacker in the state of Mississippi. He's a former Auburn commitment. He's a current Mississippi State commitment. He went to the Egg Bowl over the weekend, met with Pete Golding. He got to see Chris Paul and TJ Daugherty making plays from the linebacker position. He got to see that Ole Miss defense up close in a game against Mississippi State. He got to see how much of a gap it was when a very not motivated Ole Miss team was able to do that to that Mississippi State team. He has become a flip candidate to the point where Jeffrey Lee, the Auburn writer who has a relationship with Tyler Lockhart, crystal balled or RPM'd Lockhart to Ole Miss. Zach Berry has done it. Billy Embody, David Johnson, they have all crystal balled or RPM'd Tyler Lockhart to flip to Ole Miss. But the other side is the Mississippi State side, the Steve Robertson side, who said, no, don't worry about it. He's going to be fine. So what it sounds like is a player that is telling both sides exactly what they want to hear at this point. And we'll see exactly how it looks. Tyler Lockhart, like I said, is from Winona High School in Winona, Mississippi. Top 200 level player, 4-star linebacker. Ole Miss has Jacoby Hobson committed as well. He's another linebacker type spot. Ole Miss is building up this defense at a very high level, and Tyler Lockhart, should he flip over, would actually be a big help to that linebacker room and those players, especially with the Hobson and everything coming in. And Pete Golding obviously has a plan. Next up on the list is Connor Hawes. Connor Hawes is an offensive lineman out of Osceola High School in Kissimmee or St. Cloud, Florida. He's in that county. He is the number 27 player in Florida. He actually projects as an interior offensive lineman. He's a player that loves contact. He plays very physical. He could be an excellent run blocker in the system, maybe another Caleb Bourne type interior offensive lineman. He is currently an Arkansas commitment, and it's never at a level that you poo-poo Arkansas commitments under Sam Pittman, because you can say what you want to about Arkansas. He actually knows how to recruit the offensive line, and that's how he's made his bones previously at Arkansas, at Georgia, and then back as the head coach, taking over the offensive line unit. And they got much better this year over what they were a year ago. Looking at his stats, he's a 4-star on 3, a top 200 player. He is 3-star on 247, ESPN, and Rivals has him as a 5.5 3-star. Now, funny story, just a little Steve Willis story time right now. When Ole Miss was recruiting Nick Broker, and Nick Broker was committed to Ole Miss, Nick Broker was a top 2 player in the state of Illinois on 3, on 247, and on ESPN. Or on 3 might not have been a thing at that point, but on 247 and on ESPN and maybe on Scout or something like that. Rivals had him as the lowest ranked possible 3-star there is. I got into a huge Twitter argument, I'll never forget it, with Josh Hemholt over that, who was the Midwestern recruiting analyst for Rivals at that time, over his ranking of Nick Broker. Big brouhaha. It was a huge thing. I know Josh, everything's fine, but big argument. Josh Hemholt argued all of his reasons why he didn't think that Nick Broker was going to do anything. And I argued all the reasons why I thought Nick Broker was a pretty good offensive lineman. Nick Broker ended up starting for 4 years at Ole Miss and was a really good soldier and player for the Ole Miss football team. So whenever I see Rivals give somebody a lowest possible 3-star ranking, especially an offensive lineman, it is impossible for me to go anywhere else than Nick Broker, especially when you see 4-star top 200 player on the list. So that was kind of funny indeed. The last one we're going to talk about is Deuce Knight. And I put him last on the list because I think he's probably the least likely to flip. He's the number 1 quarterback in the state of Mississippi. He's a Navy All-American, not an Army All-American, and Navy All-American, because the San Antonio game is now the Navy All-American Bowl. Go Navy. He is a current Auburn commitment. He is a former Notre Dame commitment. He is a good player, a super athlete, and Brian Smith, who is the Florida football scout and the Locked On recruiting analyst, absolutely loves this player. Extremely athletic, good quarterback. Now, why don't I think, and I'm not getting my hopes up about Deuce Knight, what is going on to do that? Because Deuce Knight did take an official visit for the Egg Bowl, which was a big deal because we said going into that, if Deuce Knight showed up at Ole Miss, it's game on. And Deuce Knight showed up at Ole Miss, and it is game on. So Ole Miss is clearly in the top 2 for Deuce Knight. And you know my position of being a top 2 in a high school recruitment for the transfer portal later on down the road. Everybody knows my position on that. But Deuce Knight at Auburn kind of makes sense. They're desperate for a quarterback. Desperate, everything. In their mind, they would have won 9 games this year if they had a quarterback that wasn't Peyton Thorne. In their mind. I'm not saying that's reality or not. So Deuce Knight is something that they are desperately willing to take. And I've heard decent, really good NIL numbers that I just don't think that even if Ole Miss wanted to sign the kid, I don't think they would match that offer because that's how desperate Auburn is right now for a quarterback. And Deuce Knight is that guy. He has all the talent in the world of what's going on. The thing about it is, if Hugh Freeze wins 5 games next year, if Hugh Freeze wins 6 games next year, Hugh Freeze is not going to be the coach the year after that, which means Deuce Knight is immediately recruitable in the transfer portal again, and it is all good of what's going on. Really interesting stuff. Let's bring this up real quick. Deuce Knight's statistics. He's a top 50 player on every site except 247. 247 has him at 52. He is a consensus 4-star player, and he's listed as a 5-star, I think, whenever you do like the on-3 consensus or things like that. So those are the 3 main flip possibilities for Ole Miss. But this signing day isn't just about those flips. Everybody's going to remember if and when Ole Miss is able to flip somebody. And we're going to do live streams during the day, potentially, if a big flip happens for 5 or 10 minutes or something like that. So we have pretty big plans today, what's going on. We'll talk about that in the 3rd segment. But it isn't just about that. There's players like Raycine Guillory from Alito, Texas. Winston Watkins from Venice High School in Florida. Tylen Lee, who is a potential flip candidate the other way. Everybody talks about Mason Dunn, the cornerback out of Tupelo, a potential flip candidate the other way. So flips are a question. Flips are going to be a story, but it's not the only story of signing day. For instance, Ole Miss might be landing a talented Texas running back. He's reclassifying, and all signs point to Ray Guillory heading to Ole Miss. What type of player is he? And how can he fit into the Rebels offense? Find out next. Do you hate the team you've drafted in your season-long fantasy league? Or maybe your fantasy football season is already over and you want to stay in the action? Do not worry. Better Together is here to change the game for you. Better Together is the first cooperative daily fantasy program where teamwork beats talent. Instead of competing against your friends, you play with them. Here's how it works. Pick more or less on real-time player stats to team up with your friends and strategize your way to the top of the leaderboard. It's like turning your group chat into a winning fantasy team, only this time you're all working together instead of talking trash. I've already joined the Locked On College Football Saturday Games contest, and it is so much fun breaking down the stats and making picks with a buddy. Plus, it's a great way to stay connected with friends, even when you can't watch the games together in person. Better Together takes the social experience of sports to the next level. It's all about camaraderie. Playing daily fantasy is fun alone, but it's so much better with friends, and you get to prove your group chat is the best by climbing the leaderboard together. So download Better Together now from the App Store and sign up using the promo code Locked On. That's all one word, for a free $10 entry into any NCAA football or NFL contest. Come play with me at Locked On CFB Saturday Games contest this Saturday. Remember the code Locked On. That's all one word. Because winning alone is fun, but it is better together. So, an interesting thing. Ole Miss going into the 2025 season at their running back position. Right now you have Dominic Thomas. Looks like he's coming back. And you have Logan Diggs. It looks like he should be healthy at that point. He should be ready to go through spring if we're going to be honest about it. And Shakai Mills-Knight is supposed to sign today, a really, really great high school running back out of the Baylor School in Chattanooga, Tennessee. We'll talk about him on tonight's live stream. Oh, I just let the cat out of the bag, didn't I? But we'll talk about that in the next segment. But Raycine Guillory, Ray Guillory out of Alito, Texas is interesting. And looking at Ray Guillory's number, he reclassified from the 2026 class to the 2025 class. He is rated a 4-star on 3. The number 26 running back in the country or something like that. ESPN has him as a 4-star. Rivals has him at a 4-star. 247 has him as basically an unranked 3-star, where you just rank the stars, but you haven't broken him down. It looks like he has not been evaluated a little bit. But Raycine Guillory is a really good football player. He's from Alito, Texas, playing at an extremely high level of football. There's a couple of games on his huddle page where he plays like against Denton Ryan, and everybody knows what Denton Ryan has. And he looked like he absolutely belonged on that field, even though technically he was an underclassman playing on that field, because when most of these games were played this year, he was classified as a junior in high school to where he was making plays. And as that junior, he showed and looked like he belonged against Denton Ryan. He looked like he belonged against Lancaster. Those are two of the games that I have watched. And I'm impressed with him. Now, he doesn't have Trendon Holiday speed. He doesn't have like super speed forward, but he is definitely a phone booth type player, and his lateral quickness is really good. He does run track. He is an 11.5-second 100-meter runner in track. So that's not slow by any means. I mean, you have to be in the 10s in Texas to be a really good track runner, but he's in the 11. So he's not slow, but he's not super elite fast, but his sideways quickness, his lateral movement is definitely worth keeping an eye on of what he can do. I wanted to look at his game tape, not his highlight film, his game tape against Denton Ryan, against Lancaster, against some of these higher level programs in the state of Texas, to see what it does on all of his touches, not just his big plays, not just his wow plays that is liable to end up on a splash reel, his regular plays where he's pass protecting, his regular plays where he's just going out for a check down pass to where he happens to touch the ball. Those are the type plays I'm interested in of a player that is an underclassman reclassifying up. Do I think he is going to be able to contribute as a true freshman at Ole Miss? I do not know if he ends up there. By the way, his announcement is at like 6 o'clock Central tonight or 7 o'clock Central tonight. He will announce, so it will be later on in the day. Perhaps during our live stream, he will actually announce for that as well. But I think he can contribute as a true freshman at Ole Miss. I do not think he is going to be the alpha dog in the room, not with Logan Diggs and not with Shekai Mills Knight. They're going to basically have that position on lock moving forward as far as being the alpha dog in 2025. But I do think there is a role for Ray Guillory if he reclassifies and signs with Ole Miss. And that role is what we all hoped Ulysses Bentley would have been this year. I think you'll see Ray Guillory returning kickoffs. I think you will see some spot duty against tired defenses to where he has a chance to do some work. I think you will see this Ole Miss team bludgeon teams a little bit in the run game with Shekai Mills Knight, with Logan Diggs, and have this quick scat back to take advantage of everything that's going on. I think that is all possible for what can happen. So yes, I do think he will see potentially the field. If not, he will definitely be on special teams. I do not think this is a situation where Ray Guillory is going to redshirt. I don't think that is even possible. But his skill set sets him up in a way to where he can be a very effective runner, especially late in games. And if he's able to do that, he could be quite good as well. Again, he's not the only runner. Shekai Mills Knight, everybody's excited about that. Caleb Cunning's excited. Keon Young, excited. There's a lot of big name players on this team. And we'll talk about how this class breaks down a little bit in the next segment. But I do not want to overlook anybody and think that I'm doing that. Like Jacoby Hobson, he gets forgotten about because he's been committed for a year from time to time. A good player. Ole Miss has planted a flag, so to speak, at Lake Cormorant. Lake Cormorant has kind of become the new South Panola for Ole Miss football. Ole Miss is making inroads potentially in Tupelo, and that will be a big deal if Ole Miss can do that. Tupelo has traditionally been a Mississippi State school, but we'll see what happens with Mason Dunn. He is somebody that could be a flip watch target the other direction. Alabama's got the full court press on Mason Dunn. Will Ole Miss survive that? We'll find out today. There's so much going on. Ole Miss has a player that they're trying to, at the last minute, bring in Winston Watkins. Winston Watkins, he's mentioned basically nothing but Ole Miss for the last 3 months. He is a 4-star wide receiver out of, I think, Fort Myers, Florida. He goes to Venice High School. And he's a prototypical slot wide receiver. He's everything you would want at the slot position. He's gotten quiet. He is going to pick between Ole Miss and Colorado likely on signing day. There may be somebody else that we're not thinking about. Maybe Indiana or somebody like that has come into the picture. We'll see. Recruiting is unpredictable, but the way it looks, if you're just going by the tea leaves, Ole Miss fans should be pretty excited about that. And if Ole Miss signs one player, just one player on signing day that weren't already having commitments from, Ole Miss will have a top 15 class. If Ole Miss has a good day tomorrow, they could move up as high as 12th or 13th. And for a program that has a reputation as being a transfer portal program, having a top 15 high school recruit that is in the blue chip ratio is exactly what you want. This has been a pretty banner year for this coaching staff recruiting. Everybody's going to look at A.K. Deer. Everybody's going to look at Deuce Knight if he goes to Auburn and say, oh, what might have been? Well, what might have been is that you got 9 opportunities to get those players back. And Ole Miss being in the top 2 for both of them is exactly where they want to be. That's the truth of what's going on. So Coming up in our final segment, Ole Miss is closing in on a potential top 15 recruiting class. It's balanced, it's loaded with star power, and it's ready to make some waves. Plus, we're breaking down plans for our end of early signing day live stream right here on Locked On Ole Miss. Don't miss it. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Ole Miss was a 4-touchdown favorite over Mississippi State, and Ole Miss wasn't able to get that, because that game is so weird. Georgia is an underdog in this SEC championship game to the Texas Longhorn, a team they beat on their own home field by 15 points. I have a hunch that Georgia is about to roll in this one. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place those bets. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on college football and the NFL, all in one place. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started and join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel. It's an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So, pretty good what Ole Miss has done recruiting this year, and they have set themselves up in a very fine level. If Ole Miss gets one commitment tomorrow that they didn't already have, an assignee, I guess you can say, Ole Miss is going to be in top 15 in the recruiting rankings per On 3. If you look at the rankings overall, Miami's sitting at 12. They're 90.901. Ole Miss is at 90.041, and they're slightly there. Having a 90 means you have basically a 4-star average to your signing class. That's a pretty good number. That's probably more important than the blue chip ratio. Oklahoma is being Oklahoma. Notre Dame's recruiting well. Miami's recruiting well. Penn State's recruiting well. SC's recruiting well. Missouri's recruiting well as well. But Ole Miss is right there at 16th, and they have a chance to move up on signing day. I'm really impressed. I've been so completely locked in on this 2024 season, just absolutely locked in, that recruiting has slipped from my mind from time to time. And that turns out was a mistake. I mean, Ole Miss was so close, so very close to ended up with like a top 10 level class. And everybody's going to say that Lane Kiffin can't recruit high school. Ole Miss can't recruit. They all set narratives and do all of that. And that's fine, whatever. But Ole Miss having a top 15 high school recruiting class, they're likely going to have a top 5 to top 10 transfer portal class as Ole Miss looks to replace as many as 50 players, even though they do have a nucleus intact of different players. I think Ole Miss is in a really good shape. And, I was a little bit concerned of what was going on, especially back in August. It's like, oh my goodness, we have to replace 50 players going into next season. How will we do that? What is that going to look like? And I knew that the Mississippi recruiting class was okay, but I didn't think that Ole Miss was going to go super exorbitant in the high school recruiting ranks, which they haven't. And the transfer portal is going to be good. I figured Ole Miss was going to handle that well as well. But there's questions that happen with Jackson Dart leaving Ole Miss. Who is next? And you see Austin Simmons against Georgia just come in and light it up. And you saw the hopes and dreams of every Ole Miss fan turn into a last dance, which was the craziest, silliest thing that anybody could actually publicize in a program that is year to year. But I digress on that. But it gave you a chance to break away from that. It's like, oh, next year we're going to be fine. He looks good. And I think that if he develops over the course of this offseason, I expect Walker Howard to fight in spring as well. And with AJ Maddox, all of that's going to be fine. Maybe Ole Miss brings in through the transfer portal a backup quarterback. I do think Austin's the dude for 2025. Of course, I thought Austin was the dude well before this season. Well before the season, I knew that Austin was going to be good. And That's pretty good. Brian Smith, the Florida football scout, the Locked On recruiting analyst, is like, hey, this guy's a unicorn. This guy is special. And if you can hold on to him and use him correctly, you have a chance to be pretty good. Anyway, tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do an end of early signing day live stream tonight. We're going to talk about if Ole Miss was able to flip any of these targets, if they were able to flip all of these targets, the other players that signed, we talk about it. We have some pretty snazzy new graphics, as you saw for signing day, that we break out once a year. It should be a whole lot of fun. We're going to do that live stream on Thursday. We're going to have the SEC squad show. I may not be a part of that. I do not know at this point. And on Friday, Tom Vanderford. On Saturday, Michael Katz. On Sunday, live stream. And that live stream on Sunday will either be the playoffs, which isn't likely. Ole Miss has like a 3% chance. Or the bowl game, wherever Ole Miss ends up. I'm seeing a lot of Las Vegas Bowl popping up on Twitter right now. Ole Miss playing in the Vegas Bowl, which means that they would have a pretty early December competition in Las Vegas for a bowl game against either Washington or USC. And if Ole Miss plays USC, I would be all about that. Anyway, you're going to have Inside the Rebels, the 247 site, appearing at multiple signings over the course of the day. On3 is probably likely going to do the same thing. Ray Guillory is supposed to go at, I think, 6 Central Time or 7 Central Time, one of those going on. So we'll see exactly how that goes with him. The signing day has a chance to be pretty great for Ole Miss, if we're going to be honest. It's at the point where it's going, no matter what happens today, it's going to be a great signing day. But it has a chance to be really great with Ole Miss getting up into pretty heady levels to build the personnel on the roster and being a little bit better, even so. And that's impressive type stuff. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves in offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the number one Ole Miss podcast. And thank you for making me the Ole Miss morning show on the web. That's awesome. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On SEC podcast. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches, covering the best conference in college football. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And exciting news, you can now become a Locked On Ole Miss insider. The best and easiest way to stay updated on all things Ole Miss sports is our texting program that sends you notifications on anything relevant without the hassle of message board filled with trolls. Enjoy a 14-day free trial and experience the future of college sports coverage. We're adding new perks as we grow, so do not miss out. The link is in the description. And this being signing day, our snazzy new graphics and stuff that we hear over the course of the day, we're going to make the Insiders program first to hear it. We're at it. For those watching on YouTube, we're going to send you to Locked On College Sports right now. Happy early signing day and hotty toddy, everyone.